Yeah, again, so in a couple of different forms, really, but organizations, everybody will start off from their initial hub as a business. And ultimately, through growth, they'll look to cement, additional teams or offices within different regions, different countries, obviously, to help them support, whether there are language barriers if they're launching within another country, or it may even be due to time zones. So, general expansion, really, and probably the major one on this is the announcement of opening of new offices, obviously to support that I mentioned. So, this will come then with an array of, I suppose, other complications within the background. So, for argument's sake, if you are let's say, fintech organization, you're dealing within digital format, digital currency, then the complications will align from multiple different facets. So, if you are operating out of the UK and you are suddenly looking to open up and launch across the US, for example, the complications within that will delve right down from obviously currency that they are dealing in. Again, things like customer support across different time zones. It may even actually come down to complications such as different tax laws. That's very, very vast across the US and actually varies from state to state. So suddenly where you can start to understand, okay, well, they're launching or announce that they're opening a new office within this location, it's suddenly an opportunity outside of that to start to think of the other implicating factors that are going to play a part within that launch of that new arm of the business. So really, where you're starting to look for those different opportunities, this can come in from a multitude, really, from a legal perspective, compliance, from a regulatory aspect, can even come across even from more of a staffing point of view, and across obviously HR laws changing, even from like staff payroll, for example. It really does start to implicate and affect all those different factors that will then go into that business. So ultimately, from a sales professional that's looking for new opportunities to sell their product, whatever that may be, to fit in with that, they really need to start thinking around, okay, well, within that specific region, what is it that could perhaps influence or change? But ultimately, as much of these organizations will have, they will have consultancies that are helping them go through this migration and transition in terms of opening those new offices. But realistically, there's probably still going to be a lot of things down at a day-to-day level, perhaps, that they haven't thought of. And that, again, more so thinking more around, okay, what about how are the team going to operate? Is there different factors that affect that sales team's outreach within the day? For argument's sake, if they're in the US on the East Coast and they're having to sell right across the US, how's that then going to differ if they're reaching out to the West Coast, for example? There's a lot of other factors within here where there's opportunity to sell different products and different services into that business to help obviously fund and support that move. Ultimately, behind the scenes as well, in order for an organization to open a new office, there's going to be some funding and there's going to be a budget in place in order to help them get that off the ground. So there's a good opportunity for spend within that, but really it's from a sales point of view, it's understanding the reach out, but really getting in to understand the pains that company has experienced, and actually what's the process that they've been through their consultancy, in order to open that new office. And it's then finding the gaps in terms of where your product can help support that move. And ultimately, let's face it, any new business that's opening within a new region, there's a strategic reason why they have chosen to do that. Maybe that's in terms of the additional revenue predominantly that they can get from that. Is it around the bigger deal sizes that they may be able to get? Is it around actually a bigger market in terms of where their ICP customer fits? It's around understanding that to then essentially funnel back in, and ultimately getting your product and your pricing point to fit within that budget allocation.